If you could walk through the corridors of your own mind, what would you see?
For most of us, our internal architecture isn't built of lived experiences, but of archived intentions. We are essentially curators of a museum of unfinished things. We warehouse some days like priceless artifacts that we are too afraid to touch. Someday, I'll write that book. Someday, I'll mend that relationship. Someday, when the stars align and the bank account is full, I will finally begin to inhabit my own life. We treat time as if it were a sedentary object, something we can pile up and save for a rainy day. But the reality of being 75 years old is the realization that time is not a hoard, it is a leak. You don't save time, you only decide how quickly you are willing to let it slip away. I look at the young people today, so vibrant, so full of kinetic energy, and I see them walking through these same mental hallways. They are so busy building the gallery that they forget to paint the canvases. They believe that life is something that happens later, after the degree, after the marriage, after the promotion. They view the present moment as a mere obstacle to be overcome on the way to a real existence. But here is the secret that the dust motes in an old attic know. The grand opening never comes. There is no ribbon-cutting ceremony for your happiness. There is only the messy, unfinished construction of today. If you are waiting for a permission slip to start living, consider this narrative your final notice. We must stop being curators of a future that may never exist and start being participants in a present that is already fading. In the world of navigation, there is a cruel optical illusion known as the horizon fallacy. No matter how fast you sail, the horizon maintains its distance. It is a beckoning line that promises an arrival it can never deliver. In our modern lives, we have turned our joy into a horizon. We have tied our contentment to a milestone that, by its very nature, recedes as we approach it. We live on a hedonic treadmill. We tell ourselves that the next peak will be the one where we can finally sit down and breathe. I'll be at peace once I hit this salary. I'll be happy once the mortgage is paid. But the human brain is an achievement machine. Once it conquers a hill, it immediately begins scanning for a mountain. We have become a species that is excellent at striving, but utterly illiterate in the language of being. I spent nearly half a century climbing a corporate ladder, convinced that every rung was a step toward a legacy. I viewed my exhaustion as a badge of merit. I thought that by neglecting the now, the quiet dinners, the walks in the rain, the simple act of reading a book, I was investing in a later that would be twice as sweet. But looking back from the vantage point of 7 decades, I realize I wasn't investing, I was gambling. I was betting the only thing I actually possessed, my vitality and my time, on a phantom promise of future leisure. We mistake busyness for purpose. We fill our calendars to avoid the terrifying silence that asks us who we are when we aren't producing. The horizon is a beautiful guide, but it is a terrible destination. The work will never be truly done. There will always be another email, another crisis, another goal. If your peace is conditional on the world being quiet, you will never know peace. You must learn to find it in the middle of the noise, in the footsteps you take while the mountain is still far away.
We are raised to worship the wrong denominations. We measure our worth in currency we can print, but we ignore the currency that is finite and irretrievable, our attention. Your life is not the sum of your bank accounts or your accolades. Your life is exactly what you paid attention to today. Where you place your focus is where you exist. If your mind is perpetually anchored in the digital void, you are living a ghost's life. If you are obsessed with yesterday's mistakes, you are living in a tomb. If you are paralyzed by tomorrow's shadows, you are living in a fiction. I recall a morning in my garden years ago. My grandson, barely 4 at the time, had discovered a beetle. To his eyes, this creature was a cosmic wonder, a shimmering, iridescent green jewel crawling across a leaf. He was calling to me, his voice full of urgent gravity, wanting me to witness this miracle. Physically, I was standing right there, but mentally, I was in a boardroom 3 days in the future, rehearsing a conflict that hadn't even happened yet. I gave that boy a counterfeit version of myself. I nodded, I smiled, I said, "That's nice, Henry," while my soul was calculating spreadsheets. Now Henry is an adult. That beetle is long gone. That specific golden hour of light is extinguished. I had the money to buy him the most expensive toys in the world, but I lacked the discipline to give him 3 minutes of my undivided soul. True wealth is the capacity to be entirely present in the moment you are standing in. It is the ability to taste your food, to feel the texture of the wind, to hear the silence between the notes of a song. These are the small things that at the end of the road turn out to have been the only things of any weight. We are currently the victims of the most sophisticated heist in human history. It isn't our data or our money that is being stolen, it is our solitude. We have reached a point where we are terrified of being alone with our own thoughts. The moment a gap appears in our stimulation, a red light, an elevator ride, a quiet evening, we reach for the black mirror in our pockets. We are systematically destroying the silent life. Solitude is the soil in which the self grows. Without it, we are just a collection of echoes, repeating the opinions and trends we've absorbed from a feed. We have become the most connected generation in history, yet we are plagued by a profound, gnawing sense of isolation. This is because true connection requires the friction of the real world. It requires the vulnerability of eye contact and the shared endurance of silence. The digital world is a curated highlight reel. It is a stage-managed version of reality that makes our own behind-the-scenes mess feel like a failure. I see young people so obsessed with documenting the sunset on their screens that they forget to let the light actually hit their retinas. They are collectors of digital proof, yet they have no sensory memory of the event itself. I want to challenge you to reclaim your silence. Put your device in a drawer for 2 hours. Go for a walk without a soundtrack. Sit in a chair and just look at the trees until the itch to be productive fades. Beneath that itch, beneath that anxiety of being uninformed, is where your real life is waiting for you. Life is not a series of status updates. It is a series of breaths. The digital thief wants you to believe that the world out there is where the action is, but the most important conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself in the stillness of the morning. Do not let the noise of the world drown out the whisper of your own soul.
One of the most exhausting weights we carry is the desire for universal approval. We spend the better part of our lives trying to fit ourselves into the molds that others have prepared for us. We pursue careers to satisfy our parents' anxieties. We buy houses to signal our status to neighbors we don't even like. We say yes to 1,000 obligations because we are terrified of the social friction of saying no. When you are young, the need for tribal belonging is a biological imperative. You want to be relevant. You want to be seen as successful by the world's narrow metrics. But as you age, the social shadow begins to shrink. You realize, with a mixture of relief and horror, that most of the people you were trying to impress weren't actually looking at you. They were far too busy worrying about what you thought of them. There is a profound, sacred power in the word no. It is the boundary you draw to protect your limited supply of heartbeats. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter to you, you are automatically saying no to something that does. If you say yes to a weekend of work you don't care about just to please a superior, you are saying no to your rest, your health, or your family. It takes immense courage to be disliked. It takes courage to live a life that looks small to the outside world, but feels expansive to you. I remember the day I chose to step away from the height of my career. My peers looked at me as if I were insane. They saw it as a surrender, but I wasn't surrendering. I was finally claiming my own time. I realized that the only person whose disapproval I should truly fear was the 90-year-old version of myself. If I stayed for the sake of the title, that old man would look back and see a man who was a slave to other people's expectations. If I left, he would see a man who finally understood that his life belonged to him, not to a corporation. Do not be afraid to disappoint those who do not have to live with your regrets. Your time is a gift. Don't trade it for a moment of social comfort. There is a philosophical realization that is both haunting and deeply liberating. The realization that for everything you do, there will be a last time. There was a last time your parents picked you up. There was a last time you played a game with your childhood friends. There will be a last time you smell the air before a storm. A last time you hear the voice of a specific friend. A last time you wake up without the aches of age. The tragedy and the beauty of life is that we almost never know when the last time is happening. We navigate our days under the assumption of infinite repeats. We assume there will always be another summer, another dinner, another chance to say, "I love you." This finitude is the very thing that makes life a masterpiece. If we lived forever, the sunset would be a boring, mechanical event. But because our days are numbered, every beam of light is a miracle. Because we are temporary, every connection is sacred. I am 75 years old. I know that the majority of my last times are behind me. But this hasn't made me bitter. It has made me vibrant. It has taught me to taste my coffee as if it were a rare vintage. It has taught me to listen to my wife's stories with the intensity of a man hearing music for the first time.
My message to you is this: stop waiting. Stop preparing for a life that is already happening. The architecture of a meaningful life requires you to be the inhabitant of your days, not just the architect of your future. Go on that trip, write that letter, forgive that old grudge, quit the path that is draining your spirit, put down the phone and look into the eyes of the people standing in front of you. Do not wait until you are 75 to realize that the museum doors were always open and the masterpiece was the very breath you were drawing. Start today. Start now, because the clock is ticking and it is a beautiful, terrible, precious sound.